Hi, welcome to Profiles, the news program of Muskegon County Cooperating Churches. My name's Tim VanderHaar. I'm pastor at First Congregational Church, UCC, downtown Muskegon. And my guest today is Lily Marx, who wears a number of hats. Lily's pastor at St. Gregory's Episcopal Church and is on our board for Cooperating Churches, is involved with program development and promotion there. But lately she's been working especially on something called recovery congregations. That's what we're going to talk about today. But before we jump into that, Lily, welcome. Glad to have you with us. And anything else you want to add to my intro?
No, that about sums it up.
Okay. Well, recovery. What does that mean?
That's a good question, because I think that question I get more than any question. In this instance, recovery means recovery from addictions of all kinds, to substances, all kinds of substances. So,
And that's pretty broad because, you know, one of the things from my perspective, not everybody agrees with me, but I see the world as full of addictions to things, some of which are more harmful than others, but they're all a symptom of something that
Right.
needs attention in our lives.
right, absolutely.
So, you know, right away when we talk about substance addiction or abuse, we tend to think of opioids, we think of alcohol, we think of, you know, different things that we've labeled as addictive. But I think there's common denominators. So
There are. And there's, you know, if someone has an addiction to substance use or abuse, there probably are other things going on in their lives as well that need attention, not just the addiction itself.
So this recovery congregations movement is something you've been working at for a while. And I don't know if there's many other places in Michigan where that's going on, because you've kind of imported the idea from elsewhere.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about the history.
Right. Well, back in April, I got approached by Mediation and Restorative Services. They had been to a conference, heard about recovery congregations in the state of Tennessee. There's a statewide program. It's affiliated with state government called Recovery Congregations. So there's a whole aspect in their mental health piece that is working with faith-based organizations and addictions, or recovery to addictions. And so it's been going on for about 7 years. It's been highly successful.
So there is a track record. It's not a new thing.
Right. And they came back from this conference excited and said, where's the best place to recruit congregations, faith-based organizations to something like this? And they thought of Muskegon County Cooperating Churches. That made a lot of sense. So they approached me and said, can we do this? And I said, let's give it a try. Then we were able to get a grant from public health. Public health is very concerned about this, particularly with the opioid crisis. So they gave us some money and said, here, get this initiative going. And so we started in April working on it.
Well, you know, and I can see that it would make sense from their perspective because in my limited experience, but, you know, I've been around for a while, and you deal with people in crisis, families who are dealing with people who are dealing with addiction and all of that, and there's no quick, easy fix. It's very labor intensive. And so a partnership that pulls in not just professionals but also congregations makes sense to me.
Right. And we don't consider ourselves the professionals. We consider ourselves those that are able to assist and help and support those in the profession of helping those in recovery.
So the role as it relates to those who are in recovery is primarily as community support, network of friendships and connections, and that kind of thing.
And the faith-based organizations make sense because that's what we're in the business of doing, right? Being compassionate.
Building a compassionate community.
Yeah, and building pathways to wholeness, to health, wellness. So it makes sense that the churches would get involved and be involved on a larger level than we have been. It really is ministry.
Well, and for me as a pastor, I look at that and I think, maybe there are some things we can learn from this about how to be the kind of community that the church says it wants to be.
Right. How can we be church,
How
right?
can we be church?
Yep.
So you kicked it off in April, starting spreading the word around.
Right.
And recruiting congregations.
Right.
And, that's 9 months ago. How has it been going as you've been doing that?
Our goal was to have at least, by the time the grant ended, 5 churches established as recovering congregations. We achieved that goal. We had 5 certified and really ready to begin working together as a task force to establish themselves in the community. Those 5 churches were First Baptist, New Jerusalem Missionary Baptist, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Unity of Muskegon, Mount Herman, and was that 5?
That's
or was that
5,
4?
I think.
Okay, yeah. So those were our churches as we began. Since that time, 3 churches have joined. They're in the certification. 3, I want to say faith-based organizations, not churches necessarily, have joined, and they're in the certification process. Certification means they have to go through some training.
Certain amount of training.
Yeah, certain amount of training.
I guess that's one of the things I want to talk about.
Yeah, before we can call them. Yeah.
If people are listening to us and saying, that sounds like something my church ought to be involved in.
Right.
What is the process?
Right.
How does that work?
Well, the process is I will come and talk about it to see if it's a good fit for the church, for the faith-based organization. And once I have that conversation, then we will have periodic trainings where we bring them in. And what we train on is addiction, just the understanding addiction, the brain science of addiction, understanding recovery, understanding relapse, understanding resources in the community, resources such as peer recovery coaches, the Red Project, different things in the county that are going on to help and that we can support, treatment as
Find
well,
out
all
where
of that,
where the resources are.
Right.
So step 1 is to contact you, actually.
Right.
If people think they might be interested,
Right.
you don't have to know for sure. Oh, yeah, this is where we fit.
Right.
It's like, maybe this will work for us. Maybe we have something to contribute here. Let's talk to Lily and find out.
Right.
And have her come and we'll explore.
Right.
So there's not a commitment at that level.
No. But if then they want to take it to the next step, then they come to the training. And
Okay.
it's a one-day training that we provide. We use local people, so it's in videos, and so it's not costly at all. We don't charge anything for it. You just come, you get trained, you get certified. Then we have monthly task force meetings that the individuals, because each faith-based organization is asked to compile a team. Team can be 2 people, it can be 8 people, anything in
Whatever
between.
fits their circumstances.
Right. We're not expecting every congregation that says, I want to be a recovering congregation, to have to be trained or have to know everything. We have goals in the future about education and training for congregations, but right now we just need that
Starting with a team to
yeah,
get that team on board and trained
right,
and equipped.
Right, and if they have a passion for this, if they have people in recovery, this is probably a good fit for them. And we want to be all throughout the county. We don't want to just be in the downtown area or just in the Heights or just in Norton Shores. We want to really spread out, and we really are looking for now churches in the northern sector.
As I was listening to the list of
Yeah.
churches you were mentioning, a couple of them in the city of Muskegon, a couple of them in Muskegon Heights. So the core seems to have some traction, but
so
it's a big county.
The 3 that we have in right now that we're looking for certification is my parish, St. Gregory's, brought it here. So Love and Grace Healing Centers, and then Holy Trinity Church of God in Christ. So we have those three, and then I have two churches. So it's like we're like doubling our size since the grant. Two churches that want me to come and make a presentation.
Okay.
So we're slowly
So the word
gaining
is
some
spreading.
momentum. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know that at our Cooperating Churches annual meeting, you showed a video that I think was a real attention getter. And the title of that was something along the lines of "Everything you know about addiction is wrong."
Right. Yeah.
And I wanted to trot that out
Yeah.
because people can look it up. It's on YouTube.
Right.
You can find it. And it's well worth watching.
Yes.
But-
And that individual that did that TED Talk is also wrote a book called Chasing the Scream, which is an eye-opener as well. So if people have an opportunity to get that book and read it, it just really takes us into a different place about thinking about addiction and about how it's been people with addictions, people that are struggling have ended up in the legal system, and that has not been the most helpful thing. The most helpful thing is for treatment people, for our doctors, for our churches, our lay people to really know how to walk with people in recovery.
So that we can
Right.
deal with it as an illness to be healed rather
Right.
than a crime to be punished.
Right, or a moral failing.
Or a moral failing.
Yeah,
or,
which is
or whatever.
has
which
been
is,
an approach
which
from
is
the
the
churches.
way we have
yeah,
tended
in
to
the
look
past.
at it. And I think that's incredibly important. The tagline at the end of that video is something that just sticks with me. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection.
Yep.
And that is so tremendously powerful as I've reflected on that.
Yeah.
And I think of the young people, especially those of my kids and now my grandkids' generation who are struggling. There's so much truth to that, even though we're such a connected era digitally.
Yeah.
Actual human connection seems to be harder to come by than ever.
Right.
And so this is important stuff.
Yeah. And addiction, especially with the opioid crisis, affects all ages.
Yeah.
And it affects families, extended families, and we have those people in our congregations, as you well know. Yeah, we have those people in our
I'm
congregations.
of an age now and have been for quite a while where I get the AARP stuff. And one of the things they've been harping on, maybe I shouldn't put it that way, that sounds pejorative, but one of the recurring things they've been talking about in their in the material that they send out that we get in our household is the crisis of loneliness among older people.
Right.
Because people are dropping by the wayside. Pretty soon your support group and community has become pretty worn and frazzled. In today's world, your kids are as likely to be across the country or around the world as they are down the block.
Right.
So I mean, that's really true.
Yeah. So our churches and our faith-based organizations need to be educating their congregants, but they also need to be a welcoming place. We have signage to go on doors because we want people to know that when they walk into this building, they're going to find somebody in that building who knows. They're going to be directed to somebody in that building that's going to know how to talk with them and how to support them and how to walk that walk with them.
The UCC has a great slogan, and we print it on all our stuff. No matter who you are, no matter where you are in life's journey, you are welcome here.
Yeah.
That's great, but it's so broad that it's like, how do we live that out? How do we make this reality and make sure that everyone who walks through the door feels welcomed and that we care about them?
Right. One of the things that we found in the 2 trainings that we've done is there's little basic information out there for the people in our churches, the people that have come and said, I want to be a part of this, I want to learn, I want to know. They're asking real basic questions. And that surprised me. I thought there would be more information out there about addiction and about recovery, and that people would have access to that kind of information. So one of our goals will be to do public forums, trainings for not only the congregations that are part of this, but also the congregations out there that just want to send people.
Sort of public education kind of task. Let the broader community, whether you're signing up to be a recovery congregation or not, there's a lot of stuff that most of us ought to know that we don't.
Yeah. And we can't really be there for people in the way that they need us to be there. When they're relapsing and they're struggling and they're, coming up against challenges that we can't even imagine, if we don't have that kind of education, that kind of knowledge, we can't be as helpful to them and as effective with that relationship that we could be if we had that information. So.
Well, and I think just personally, because I struggle with this stuff, it's like, what's the best approach? On the one hand, you can be so sympathetic that you become an enabler.
Right.
But on the other hand, the sort of tough love, shape up or ship out kind of approach doesn't really work either.
No.
So how do you find the sweet spot to know how to be genuinely helpful to people?
Yeah. And, it's probably that love and logic kind of thing where you hold people accountable with a lot of love. Yeah, I think it's that kind of an approach, but people don't intuitively have that necessarily. We have what we were brought up with, what we learned,
with,
right?
Or what we've learned off of TV or whatever.
Yeah. So teaching people that love and logic kind of way of approaching this, I think, is really, really important. So another goal we want to do, and our churches are all open to this, is open up our doors and host support groups. Host SMART, which is self-management and recovery training groups. So what we're looking for are people in recovery to help facilitate those groups. We have the buildings. We have the places to host these groups throughout the county and these churches that have come forward and are part of this. But now we need people that are willing to go through the training and be able to facilitate these groups.
So that kind of group, would that be somewhat analogous to, say, an AA meeting or something of that nature?
SMART is a little different. It's more medical based. It's more, a learning. It's a training yourself about yourself.
Okay.
We will also, if there seems to be a need for it, we also will host Celebrate Recovery groups, which are more Christian-based groups that are more 12-step model. And, we're going to give out information about AA and NA as well. The difference between some of these groups is that some are abstinent-based and some aren't. So some of them say you have to quit cold turkey to be a part of this group.
To be part of this, you got to swear off.
You've got to let
Take
it all
the pledge.
put behind you. Yeah, and then some of the groups say no. If you need medication to assist you through your recovery to that point of not using or being whole again, we can accept that. We're not going to tell you that you have to not use completely to get where you need to go.
Well, and I suppose you could get into a lot of debate. Not that I feel like I know enough to intelligently participate in that. But you get into a lot of debate about which approach is better.
Yeah.
And it just seems to me that there needs to be a range of opportunities for people and options.
And that's what we want to build with the churches. What I've been telling the churches and the faith-based organizations that are working with us is you need to look at your community, you need to look at your environment, you need to look at your resources, and then develop something that fits for you, fits your theology, fits your way of practicing ministry in the community. That's up to people to do that, And this is not a program where we bring people in and try to get them to come to our church by opening our door and saying, "Let us help you." This isn't one of those kind of programs where
So it's not really about proselytizing.
No, not
I
at
was
all.
reading an interesting thing online the other day about somebody who had a blog, and they were saying, our nonprofit is not a ministry. Mm-hmm. And they were talking a lot about how they felt so strongly called to do certain things for the good and welfare of people in the community, that they refused to call it a ministry because out of their background, ministry meant we're trying to get them into church.
Right, right.
I'm not sure that that's what it has to mean.
No.
You know,
I don't think it does.
To minister
Yeah.
is to serve, but
Yeah.
so you can take that in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, and pure ministry is just reaching out and helping, you know, in whatever sense. And what is the church? We're just a tool of mission, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We gather to help others.
Love one another as I have loved you.
That's right. Yeah. So
It's pretty simple, but boy, are we good at complicating it.
or reversing it, yeah, making it what it isn't. Yeah, we're real good at that. So so that's so I think our major goals right now are just getting groups every day of the week, these smart recovery training groups in all the different areas every day of the week. Building that program up, getting education forums going, and then I think down the road, I think we need to look at families. How are we going to minister to extended members of families of people in recovery?
Well, and I know that is tough, because if you have a family member who is either addicted or, caught up in some kind of unhealthy situation. Maybe you don't want to label them an addict, but maybe they are, and you just don't want to use the label. I don't know. But when you have people in that space, it's really hard to know. How do I respond to this in the most helpful way? But then there's also so much grief, especially in the case where people have tried about everything, and in spite of all their best efforts, someone overdoses or commits suicide, or something tragic happens. Well, then those survivors are left with a real burden of what else could I have done?
Right.
How do I deal with this? And
Right.
that's hard stuff.
Yeah.
So
having support is really important.
having support is really important.
Through and after and within, yeah.
We're not very good at doing that.
Yeah.
So anything that can help us learn how to do that better,
Yeah.
I'm really enthusiastically in favor of.
Now, the county has Narcan kits, which can be used in the event of an overdose. And our hope is to get those into every church in the community. I know the public health department has worked hard at getting them in the streets through the Red Project, to get them in the drugstores, in the schools, all of those places. So
Yeah, but you
that's
never
another
know where it's
goal.
going to be needed. So
Right. So that's another goal. Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the Red Project. That may be something people have not heard much about.
Well, they're sort of a mobile unit. They're a group of people that are out in the streets, just connecting and talking to people, and they're on the spot. If there's an overdose or something happens on the street, they're available, and they will manage the overdoses with Narcan, with medication, those kinds of things. They'll take people for help. I don't know much more than that about them. That will be one of my first training educational forums that we're going to hold, will be to bring in Red Project and have them talk specifically about
just
what they
knowing that something like that is beginning to take shape in our community is huge. I mean, that's for me right away. Back of my mind, I'm saying I want to find out more about that, because I can see how great the need is.
And the peer recovery coach program, with Fresh Coast Alliance is another one. We'll have them come in and talk. People don't know about these resources.
Well,
they know about NA and AA, and that's about it.
Yeah, sort of barely, vaguely we know about that stuff, but it's really true in my experience in all the years that I've been in this community, in this area, I can barely keep track of just scratch the surface of the resources that are available out there. And I find again and again and again that there's a lot more stuff available than most of us are aware of. So somebody comes in and they've got a problem, and boy, if I can send them to touch base with somebody who's working on that or something similar, rather than reinventing the wheel, that is just wonderful.
One of the things about recovery congregations that people need to know is that it falls under the umbrella of the Drug-Free Coalition, which is really a combined coalition of different programs, different things that are going on in the community. And then there are subgroups, task force. Opioid task force is one of those, which I belong to. And that gives me lots of information about what the resources are and who's available out there. And then I transfer that relationship, that information to my group, which then falls under that. So we are part of that bigger coalition that's doing wonderful things. And so we have access to those resources, to knowledge of what's out there and what different organizations are doing.
So often I hear people say, well, I find myself saying, somebody ought to do something. And in fact, a lot of times somebody is doing something. I just don't know about it.
And the people in our churches don't know about it. That's what's really unfortunate, and that's what we're going to attempt to do, is to really get people more knowledgeable. Because without the knowledge, you can't really help people.
No. And so, I applaud the success thus far in enlisting congregations to be a part of this. The fact that you've got 5 of them trained, or 5 groups, maybe not congregations, 5 groups trained, 5 more sort of in the pipeline. That's huge. I don't want to diminish that. But the piece of it that really excites me is, getting information out to our general population, our congregations, who may not be in a position to say, all right, this is a program we're signing up for and we're going to get trained. But we still need the information. We still need to know.
And we'll provide that. Another aspect of this is one of the complaints about cooperating churches that I've heard a couple times is, we're not really cooperating. The churches aren't really cooperating. I don't know if you've heard that.
I've heard that. Yes,
so what makes me really excited about recovering congregations is the diversity in the churches so far that we have participating and that are wanting to participate. That this is definitely an area where we are cooperating.
Well, and that's the thing that I often think about, because I've heard that as well, and that's not wrong. But in order to cooperate, you have to have something to cooperate with.
It pulls us all together.
That we can make common cause because we recognize that this is something that touches us all. So this is really important. Well, we're counting down toward the end, folks. I hope you've been paying attention. Lily Marx is our contact person leading the charge for recovery congregations. Lily, anything else you want to say before we close?
You can reach me at Muskegon County Cooperating Churches. We have a website, and our phone number is on there, so just call.
Very good. Well, thanks for sharing some information that I think is terribly important. And I hope that a few folks have learned something new listening to us. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Until next time, we hope that you will experience life in community, somewhere, somehow. God bless you all.
Hello. Welcome to another segment of Community Forum. I'm your host. My name is George M. Bennett Jr. And I have a very